We are live. I'd like to welcome everyone to another episode of Heart to Heart with Bree. I have the Emperor back tonight, and I've been definitely looking forward to our topic, which is self love and self acceptance. Would you please introduce yourself to the viewers?
All right, thank you, Bree, for having me again. My given name at birth is Richard Kaur. I go by the Emperor. That's who I am, and I'm happy to be here again.
I'm really looking forward to us, getting into this topic. I think it's very important. So I'll jump right into it. Does self love lead to self acceptance?
Bree, no, I don't believe self-love in itself leads to self-acceptance. Um, and I think knowing oneself, one's roots, one's culture, one's purpose is more likely to lead to self-acceptance than self-love in itself. I say this because I see a lot of people creating physical and cultural versions of themselves that is very different than their original self. Now,
Okay.
they might very well have self love for this version that they've created, but clearly not accepting of who they are or who they were.
Okay, I mean, go a little deeper into that. So, because I know I would like to have an understanding of, what you're saying.
Because for me, accepting of yourself is knowing who you are and being comfortable with that and
Okay.
accepting of that and learn to love that.
Okay.
We see, especially in our societies today, you see a lot of our brothers and sisters, for example, bleaching the complexion of their skin to some unrecognizable versions of themselves.
Okay.
Now they could grow to love that version of themselves, but it's not accepting of who they were or are. Right? You've seen people culturally deviate into the spaces where sometimes you even refer to your brothers and sisters as, Black African brothers and sisters, and they'll tell you they're not. They're so deviated from their culture on themselves at art, but they might love who they are, so they might grow into loving that self that they've created, but not necessarily accepting of the self that they really are. That's kind of like what I was getting at with that.
Okay. Okay. What would you like to say to those who focus on shortcomings and negative aspects of their lives?
Well, we need to analyze, understand and accept where that comes from.
Okay.
Society and those we interact with at a young age, they are our mirrors. They show us who we are and shaping our perception from a young age. So the way people interact with you, the way they describe you, the way they describe you to others, the way they treat you, that largely influences the way you perceive yourself. So the focus on negatives and shortcomings largely comes from there. So I would say know yourself, define yourself, describe yourself, and focus on that self that you have defined for you.
Yes. Yeah, I personally I think that is very important. It's easy to get caught up on the shortcomings and negative aspects. But I think that when we dwell in that mindset, it just brings us down. That's something that I am definitely learning.
Definitely. And there is such shortcomings among us as
All of
human
us.
beings, right? And it's easy to focus on that because it doesn't require much heavy lifting. So, which is why I'm saying know yourself and define yourself and just live by that self that you've defined for you.
Yes. Why should we be mindful when speaking to children? Isn't it unkind and inappropriate to address them in reference to looks or appearance? For example, big face, broad nose, red, black, or nappy head. I remember, especially in the Jamaican culture, and that's the culture I can speak to, how people would refer. You see that big head boy there. You see that red guy. You see that broad nose boy. You see that pussy eye boy. Things like that. I think that people may think it's funny, but I don't think that they understand that they are scarring a child's soul. I mean, what's your take on that?
Well, I totally agree. We should be mindful for exactly the reasons that we just spoke about.
Yes.
We are giving children a perception of themselves early on through the way that we interact with them.
Yes.
It is more than inappropriate and unkind. We
Yes.
must know and accept where this is coming from, though, and the effects it has had on us for generations. And we kind of talk about this a little bit before we got on here. We,
Yeah.
we must reconcile with the trauma, the post-traumatic slave syndrome, that caused those before us to be this way to us. The same
Yes.
trauma that is causing us now to be this way to our younglings, and the same trauma that will cause the cycle to just keep going.
True.
This was carefully
True.
crafted and implemented and left on a self-sustaining path. And until we accept that, we can't even begin to start the reconciliation and start treating ourselves and our children like the royal beings that they are. So it goes really deep, goes really deep, and we must be mindful. Yes, I think more importantly, we have to reconcile with what has caused this and what is causing this.
Yes. I'd like to welcome Mikey Go. Thank you so much for tuning in, Mikey. Please address the toxicity of self comparison and why is this behavior toxic?
Well, funny enough, Brie, I don't necessarily think that self comparison itself is toxic.
Okay.
No, I think that having a reference point and a measuring
Okay.
stick is a good thing to have. I have an older brother, and I end up doing a lot of things that he does, and I get
I
really
think
good.
that's healthy. I think that's in itself is healthy, but I think, and this is just my personal opinion,
Mhm.
if I'm going to compare myself to someone else's level of success, their looks or whatever it is, personally, I think that's dangerous. And I see a lot of that taking place. Now, in the case of you and your brother, I think that's a healthy and beautiful thing. And I wish more of us had like these positive role models to look up to. I love the relationship that you and your brother have, by the way. And I just wish that more brothers took their younger brothers under their wing in that manner.
And I'll speak to that, Brie. But
Okay.
like I said, I got good at the things I did or do because I see my brother doing them because he provides that reference point for me, and I'm
Yes.
motivated to meet them.
Yes.
My friend Anif and I were talking just recently about the number of gifted footballers that we grew up with in our little community in Port Antonio,
Yes.
and wondering like why these people have never really progressed beyond the community. And we come to the acceptance that they never really had that reference point. The people that were reference points for them were just the stars of the community, so they didn't progress beyond that. So there's no drive to progress beyond that. So this is why I'm saying the comparison is not in itself toxic.
Okay.
I think it's made to be thought of being toxic for other reasons, like and I think it's down to the same trauma that teaches us that we can't be great together or in multiplicity, right? That it has to be one or the other, right? So it has to be Marcus Garvey or W.E. Du Bois, right? It has to be Malcolm X or Martin Luther King. It has to be Bob Marley or Peter Tosh, Bunty Killer or Beanie Man, so forth and so on. Usain Bolt or Asafa Powell. We're not yet in that place where we can acknowledge and accept greatness in multiplicity, right? Only one of us can be great are the best.
Which I think that's a sad way to think, honestly, because to be honest with you, Richie, when I think of some of the people that I have truly looked up to in life, it's been everyday people, whether they were teachers or they were like a brownie leader or a teacher at church or whatever it is, someone from the community. There were so many people that I looked up to because of, you it gave me aspirations to be a certain way because I just admired them so much.
Right. And I think I wanted to be like Pele when I was growing up. That was the reference
Yeah.
point, right?
Yeah.
But I think we need to excuse me do and teach our kids to learn what it takes to get to those level of aspirations, right?
Yes.
So you've seen someone and oh man, I would like to be like that. Teach the kids what it requires to be like that then, right?
I
It's going to
agree.
require discipline. It's going to require you going on this path and sticking to it and be livicated to it and put the work in, right? So I don't necessarily think we should say, oh, don't compare yourself to people or it's toxic to do that. I think it's healthy, but we should teach them how to then go on and achieve and not just sit there in a quote unquote envious space.
Right. No, I totally agree with you on that. But I will put it out there that, I see, especially in today's world, so many of people are caught up with celebrities who I feel are, for the most part, very superficial. And I honestly don't see them as, um, their way of life as something to aspire to, because I think some people look at their wealth, look at their fame, and think that's something to aspire to. And I don't think they really think of what goes on behind the scenes. And that's what I find toxic. That's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so now let's talk about insecurity and low self esteem. And I'd like us to address, I sent you a video about Naomi Piola. I don't know if any of the viewers are familiar with her story, but this lady, she's a lawyer, and she recently posted a selfie on her page or whatever, and she received a lot of criticism because they're like, why are you posting pictures of yourself and you're so ugly? And she had to come out. Almost, I felt sad that she even felt she had to put out a statement, but her saying, aesthetically I may not be attractive, but personally, I could see the beauty in this woman. She takes pride in her appearance. I mean, what gives us the right as a society to tear someone down like that? So I'd like you to talk about that, Richie.
As I remember my granny as well. She always say, "Every row of them stick a bush." Right. So, what you or I might look at as attractive might not necessarily be what someone else looks at as attractive. Right. Everybody has their own level of attraction, but I think it's deeper, Brie, and
Okay.
I think it goes back to what we've been talking about. We've referenced it on a few occasions so far. I think it's part of that post-traumatic slave syndrome, that have shaped generations of our people. Dr. Joy DeGruy speaks about this extensively in her research and publications on this subject. So when you think of those children, with the best potential, in the days of slavery, right? Those would be sold off at will, because they are seen as collateral. They're seen as investments, so they'd be ripped from the families and just sold off, right? So we dumb down our children, we dumb down ourselves, we teach our children to dumb down themselves and their behavior, right, for the same reason, right? So we don't want to glorify ourselves or our children, right, and say nice things about them. It's easy to just say horrible things, unkind things, right? Because we don't want to give that glow. We don't
Well,
want to.
Rich, now I would say, now when I was growing up, I think my generation, I'm older than you,
Mhm.
but I think my generation, like the things that people said to children back then, it seemed like it was the norm. I think like my kids, like their generation, I think we went from one extreme to the other when it came to this, to this generation of kids. It's like didn't want to speak to them too harshly, didn't want to criticize them. I see a difference um in the generations. I really and truly do. I mean,
And again, there is a shift, and we change constantly, and I'm not against change, and we should change, right? The world we live in is changing. I think we have to understand where certain things come from. Like, I remember recently,
yes,
Lupita Nyong'o, this Kenyan actress, right? Beautiful sister, right? Very beautiful sister. She There was an uproar not so long ago. She did a photo shoot, and they kind of like airbrushed the photos, and she was adamant that no, you don't do that,
that's
right? So
right.
I mean, and these are corporate people, right, who feel that they still have to portray you a certain way, right? But she was, assured in herself enough to say, no, I am who I am, portray me the way I am,
Yes.
not airbrush my stuff. So I feel we are in this society, and again, like I said, suffering this trauma where it's this is who you are, regardless. They just want to paint you and teach you how to paint you and teach you how to talk about you, which is why when you talk, the question you ask about kids and how do we speak to kids, right? You use the physical to describe, and it's most often negative, right? I can't
Yes.
tell you how many times I've been called bulby eye, big ears, big nose boy, bulb eye boy.
And
It's
how did that make you feel?
it had the desired effect at the time because you're a young, basic school, primary school kid. It had the desired effect at the time, until you go home crying to grandma and mom start tell you, oh, just tell them things back, like, oh, so she likes it and so do I. And, these little things that we come
Yeah,
up
yeah,
with
yeah,
about our defense of our physical look that people attack you for all the time. It's
yeah.
shallow, but it's coming
And
from
it's so
somewhere.
it's just so unkind. Hail up, Penny. Penny said, "Hail up, Richie."
Love
Yeah,
my
thanks
brother.
for tuning
Yeah.
in. Thanks for tuning in. Yeah, because I think back and I've heard, especially in Jamaica, and it's like, when you refer to children that way. Like I remember there was a kid that we met when we first moved to Jamaica, and I think he was called Rabbit Ears or something like that, which I thought was so weird. It's like, but when I think of some of these things, they end up as nicknames that people have for life. But I wonder how it feels inside because some people seem to be okay with it, but deep down, are they really?
Let me show you what I mean, Bree,
Okay,
in very short synopsis, if I might, to
sure.
show you how I'm talking about this post-traumatic slave syndrome. It's shaped the way we behave ourselves, like because the wider society has okayed our physicality, right? They keep talking about us in terms of these, oh, you're fast and you're strong and you're quick and you can dance, right? So when we perform in those arena, right, the shackles come off. We're free, right? We just let it loose and we feel at our best self, right? Now put the jacket and the tie on and go in a corporate setting, right? And it's almost like you're dumbed down. You don't have that same level of assurance about yourself, right? Because you're not supposed to be in that space, right? Society doesn't accept you in that space. You don't know how to play in that space, right? It's a trauma, right? It's a trauma that lives deep within us, and
Well,
we
let me
be.
ask you this. Hey, Joyce, thank you so much for tuning in. But shouldn't we be, and I'm just asking this question, be past that point where we're not thinking we belong, like, oh, we shouldn't have a seat at the table, or because I think if you're qualified, you're qualified. I mean, that's just my personal opinion. Like, I went to college, but I didn't graduate. But I've never felt intimidated by someone else's degree. I mean, I've always told people that going to Titchfield was a great thing for me because it instilled in me some confidence, and I have confidence in my ability regardless of whether I have a degree or not. So, I
Well,
mean, what's your take
no,
on that?
I 100% agree with you, and on
Mhm.
that, what I'm saying is, right, you or I might feel that way, and many of our friends and family and people that we know might feel that way, right?
Yes,
Sadly enough, that does not automatically mean that society or even our people, right, feel that way, and that plays
yes,
out in reality. So what I'm saying is that there's a trauma that we must reconcile with. What I'm saying is
yes,
we have to accept that this is for generations, for centuries, being the way people think of us, being the way people act towards us, being the way systems are created to treat us. It just is. And unless and until we accept that, reconcile with that, right? Break those systems down, right? Not just one or two people feeling that level of assurance when we step into the space, but everybody feels that level of assurance. And it is who is best qualified for whatever position that we're going up for will get, right? Because there's
do
nothing.
you believe that this should start at home?
Oh, well, we definitely have to, as I said, right, talk to our kids about who they are, truly who they are, and not what society tells you you are, right? You're a great being. That has to start at home, 100%, right? But that great being is still going to grow up in a system that is designed to portray them as less than the great being that they are, right? So they still have to reconcile with that. But when I'm home, my mama says I'm this, or my daddy says I'm this, and I feel like I'm this, and I behave like I'm this. But when you come into the real world, unless and until those systems and barriers and boundaries are broken down and the playing field is level, That child will feel this way at home, but treated this way whenever they step out.
But you know something? I can tell you, I remember watching an interview with Venus Williams, and the gentleman asked her, like, was she confident in her ability? She said yes, and she believed that she would win many championships. And the guy asked her several times, and you could see each time he asked her, like, she wasn't as assured as the previous times. And her father came out and he tore that guy apart. And he said, what did she tell you the first time? So why wasn't that enough? Why did you have to keep asking her that question? Do you see that you're stripping her of her confidence? I appreciated that he did what he did. I think maybe at the time you could see her like literally cringing, but I think him standing up for his daughter in that way, I think instilled a lot, because I've always loved Venus and Serena for their confidence. I think their father worked very hard. I'm sure their mother played a role to make sure that they knew who and what they were.
Mhm. Brie, let me show you exactly what I mean when I talk about the
Okay.
systems in society, right? Yesterday, right? I know
Okay.
you're a football lover the way I am a football lover, right? I was watching,
Hmm.
if my brother Penny is still on, he could attest to this because I'm sure he was probably watching too, right? Man United were playing against Brighton yesterday,
Okay.
and Man United were leading the game very comfortably. I think 3-0 at one point, and Brighton came back to 3-2, right? Man United have this player from Cameroon called Brian Mbueno on the team.
Okay.
Towards the end of the game, ball came through. He slotted the ball in, scored a beautiful goal, put Man U 4-2 up. The commentators on that game, on that passage of play, chose to highlight and spoke about Bruno Fernandes, the Man United captain, how he
Mhm.
intelligently just let the ball through. He had nothing to do with the play. He didn't pass the ball. He didn't score the goal. He did nothing. He was just in the way of the ball and he moved. So the guy who rounded the defender, the guy who slapped the ball in the back of the net, the guy who established a comfortable lead, right, was never mentioned in that whole passage. So I'm saying that society creates
Which
that.
he said, and Penny saying true that look, I've seen a lot of ugly things in the beautiful game, which does taint it.
But it's
In
about
all
society, though.
honesty.
It's deeper than just the game. This is what I was saying about society. So even though that player, this black African player, was the one who did what he did to create that winning attitude, to create that winning mentality, he was not spoken about at all. They spoke about his white captain who just stepped out of the way. That's all
Okay.
he did. But the systems that I'm talking about. So when we talk to our kids about the greatness that they are, and how they should behave themselves in the world with this assurance, they
Okay.
still face a system that puts them to the side. So unless and until those old systems are reconciled and broken down to be even, is what I'm saying. So because we feel certain way, we step out with assurance. We teach our kids to step out with assurance. That doesn't mean we operate in a world that accepts everything as so.
No, and look, the world is it is what it is. But let me ask you this. Because years ago when Ian Wright, and I'm sure you may have watched that documentary that he did about what the black footballers, the racial abuse that they endured, and a couple young guys, they had a video where they commentated on it, and they said that if David Beckham was to go to a country and if they were to disrespect him, they were sure that he would walk off the pitch. He would probably tell his players to come along with him. And it's like, okay, because the guys, I mean, look, black players have been abused, and other players, you know, for years. So my thing is, why do they still choose to play in these leagues? Yeah, I get it, the money and all of that, but at some point, I mean, it's bad. It's like, why not form your own league, or why still play? Because honestly, I've seen players being spat on. I've seen things of that, and it's like, you know what? I know if I know I'm a great player and this is what I bring to the table, I'm sorry, but I don't think I'd be willing to play for people who are going to treat me like I'm less than an animal. That's just me.
No, I agree with you, and we shouldn't. And again, I say this is not a football thing. right? Because it happens not just in
But
football, it
not just, I
happens
mean, whether it's corporate American or whatever it is, because it's all over the world. But
right.
it's like, at the end of the day, we are still there. It's like, even like as women, it's like when I think back to women, women's lib, this is not that long ago where women were fighting for their rights. I mean, it's like sometimes it's like, why do we choose and not try to come up with different things? Like, we don't have to be a part of a system if we feel like it doesn't want us.
We go back to that self-acceptance thing that we're talking about, right? This whole topic is about that self-acceptance, right? And like I seen our brother Ibrahim Traore in Burkina Faso now saying, hey, listen, no, we are sovereign beings. We're sovereign beings with resources, right? Who deserve the right to own our resources, to dictate what happens with our resources, and to benefit from our resources, right? So it's again accepting that that's who we are, right? So to walk away from that which puts us down, that which holds us as subhuman, that which discriminates against us, right? And form our own or go to our own, we have to accept that. We have to accept ourselves and that we do have a home, right? I've heard Mario Balotelli said this before, that he wish all the African players would just stop playing in Europe and go and play in their own leagues in Africa, form their own leagues in Africa. Now, can that become a reality? Yeah. Would they just allow that to happen? Probably not, because there's a lot of money involved. There's a lot of things involved. It's like when Marcus Garvey had this Back to Africa movement, right? They didn't want us to go, but they don't want us to be here. So it's about accepting who you are and be comfortable with who you are, and not be coward, not be accepting of less than you deserve, and go forth. And which is what my
Well,
brother right
to be honest, and I think this applies to all human beings, because I know that there are so many people that struggle within themselves. And I just think that everyone, should feel like they belong and should not feel inferior. I mean, I think back to childhood. And I remember going to the fish and chip shop one night, and I remember a man calling me a black monkey. But it's like, and it was something that hurt. But it was, I think back to what my mother would say to us, and it was like, I learned not to own these things. Like, I think of reading a book. It was called Little Black Sambo. I don't even know if they have books like that. I would hope not. But I never, it was later in life I was amazed that this was a depiction of a black child, because I couldn't believe that this book was about a black child, because for some reason I just could not associate myself with that. Penny is saying Balotelli says the players need to go back home and develop their own league. I mean, I've been hearing talk like this for a long time, Penny, but not seen it, but it would be nice for, especially, I mean, it's an ugly thing to watch, and I don't know how the players can endure, and I'm sure it's not just in football, but how it has to. I remember watching a video of a footballer that he was actually crying because the abuse was so terrible. And I don't think he was crying out of weakness. I think it was just out of a level of frustration. Like, why am I
something,
having to deal with
if
deal
I may, right now, because we keep saying we're not seeing this and we're not hearing that, and that might be so, that might be true. I was having this discussion with my spirit guide, Dandy. Y'all know Doctor.
Okay.
That's my spirit guide. So I called him yesterday because the hurricane, and just want to check in and
Yeah.
see. And led to a long discussion. And when you're in England, for example, right?
Yeah.
The BBC news that is propagated around the world, it's not played in England, right? I hear that news in Jamaica every 8 o'clock in the morning, right? The
Yeah.
the Ear America news from here that's propagated around the world, it's not played here, right? Because these are their propaganda machines, right? That they have propagated stuff around the world. We don't have that in our Black African culture, right? We don't have anybody advocating on our behalf, right? If anything, they shield certain things that represents us, that's well with us, right? And if we're to be honest about it, there's a lot that's going on now, right? From the some of the foundations that Garvey laid out, a lot of this is happening now in Africa, right? More so visibly and vocally with our brother Ibrahim Traore in Burkina Faso, right?
Mhm.
And in Niger and Mali, right? I just seen the president of Namibia saying she's joining forces with them. You know, our brother in South Africa. A lot of great things are happening in our homeland, right? Among our people. It's just not being propagated. It's just not being talked about, you know, for obvious reasons. So we have to be mindful as well and purposeful in the things that we say and the way we say the things we say, and not, you know, be an arm of, oh, it's not happening. It is happening. It might not be happening at pace that we would love to see it. You know, we probably won't live to see the full transition of it, but it is happening. And enough of us are involved in it, right? Especially at the leadership level now, which seems much more promising than in recent past. But it is happening. You know, to say certain things aren't happening is I don't think it's necessarily true, but it's not being publicized for obvious reasons because we don't have the media conglomerate to put forth our agendas the way other people do.
Okay. Well, I'll move on to the next question because I have a lot of questions. So let's talk about physical activity and nutrition. Can they help us on our journey as far as self love and self acceptance?
Yes, I believe they can help on our journey to self love. We feel better about ourselves when we are healthy and in good
Yes.
physical condition, right? I have been on a journey myself that includes a lot of running. And, you know, I look in the mirror and step on the scale after each run, and I feel much better about what I see, you know, as I get closer to the goals that I set for myself, right? And this can also help with our self acceptance, right? Dr. Iman Black Dandy, again, as you know, like I said, we were having a discussion yesterday, you know, about the roles, you know, in our lives, right? In this space, right? And acknowledging the fact that we're each almost like running a leg of a relay race, right? And in order to do that effectively and get the baton safely to the next person, right? He made the point to me and reference my running now that it does require endurance to sustain and get the baton around safely, right? So self acceptance for me is much more than physical. However, I do agree to endure, especially in this world, right? With the things that we've been talking about now, with
Yes.
you know, the societal pressures and everything, that endurance is important, right? Yeah, and when you can physically endure, you can mentally endure, you can spiritually endure. So I do believe that, yeah, physicality and nutrition does have
Does play a
great
role for
role.
sure.
Yes.
Let's talk about midlife crisis. I think for many people, when they hit that midlife point, some people struggle within themselves, cannot accept the aging process, cannot face maybe their bodies that are placing limitations. Maybe it's just a lot of things. I've seen some ugly things happen to people when they hit that midlife crisis point. Some people can maneuver through it very well, and some people can't. I mean, what's your take on it?
You know, to be honest, Brie, like it's a terminology that doesn't resonate with me, and it's one that I don't.
Okay, so, well, some people, and I've seen it, Richie, I've seen it many times. I think, and to be honest with you, with me myself, like when I hit my 50s, I felt I embraced it pretty well. When I hit the 60s, then I started to falter a little. Hello, Andrew. Thank you for tuning in.
But
So, I mean, for people, there for many, it's different. But okay, what's your take on that?
so here's why I say I don't embrace it.
Okay,
Because you know, I don't think anyone know when they're in the middle of their life. You know, and I see this as a psychological tool created for something else other than helping people to live their best lives. You know, I
okay.
talk about midlife crisis and people do this and they go out and buy this car and they, yeah, I think it has, you know, it's a tool created, you know, and again, speaking for myself, it, for something other than helping people to live their best lives. Because if you're supposed to hit this crisis, you know, at your
But I
midlife.
don't think it's like you're supposed to. It's just that some people do. I mean, some people, in all honesty, they just do. So,
When is midlife?
if you don't buy into it, I mean, I get it, I get it.
Yeah,
But
because I'm
there
trying to
are
figure out
people.
when is midlife? Like, how do you know when you're in the middle of your life? Like, I could be at
It's
the
not
40th
necessarily. I
of
don't think
my
it's
life now, you know?
necessarily like the middle of your life because, like you're saying, no one knows when they're going to die or how long they're going to live.
Yeah.
But maybe some people, once they hit their 40s, their 50s, they start to struggle. They're trying to go back to their youth. I think that's what the reference is to.
And if we are, let's talk about it, right? Because we talk about being purposeful in the things that we say, right? Especially to our kids, right? And to ourselves as well, right? We have to talk to ourselves, right? Right now, I'm about 3 pounds off my high school weight right now. And it's not like I'm
Okay.
trying to go back to my high school self, but I do acknowledge that when I was in high school and I was playing football, right, I was healthy, right? I was eating right. I was resting,
Yeah.
working, doing. So it's not about going back to high school state, but it's continue to do the things that made you well, that prevented you from becoming ill with disease and sickness, right? It's the things that make you healthy. So whether you're 40 or 50, right? I'm about to be 50. I'm not quite 50 yet. I'll be 50 on my next birthday. But I feel like I was when I was a teenager.
Okay.
It's not, I don't consider it a midlife crisis.
Well,
It,
I think maybe for you, you're just probably one of those men that did not hit a midlife crisis. But I know that, I mean, personally, from my own experience and from what I've seen with a lot of people, there's just something about a certain age where, this is when the affairs take place. This is when people are not making such smart decisions, and like, with the weight thing, I mean, honestly, what you've been doing, Richie, I mean, I think it's been a good thing because I think you have been reminding a lot of us, like I told you, the last video you put out, and you were honest. Hey, I've not put a video out in a while because I had to take care of myself, and I had to stop and think, how often do I just stop and put myself first? I may be on E, but I just don't feel I can stop because I still have to do all these things. It's just a mindset that a lot of us have that we can't take that time to take care of things. So, yeah, I think that it's all in a mindset and like trying to reclaim ourselves because honestly, after I watched your video and then you sent me the picture for the flyer, and I'm like, this man is just glowing, he's just glowing, but it gave me something to think about because it's like, how can I complain about things falling apart or whatever if I'm not doing my part? If you get what I'm saying.
exactly. And that's exactly what it's meant to be, Brian. I'm happy that it had that effect. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
honestly, because I think we have more control than what we realize. It's really our mindset and just doing what needs to be done. I mean, honestly, it's just because, look, I know what it's like to be thin. I know what it's like to be fat. I know what to do. I have the knowledge, I have the tools, but it's like, okay, if I get out of bed, at 5 o'clock, I'll have time to do what I need to do. But
So,
it's like when that alarm goes off and it's like, oh my God, I feel tired. I want to go back to sleep. So I think it's like, how badly do we want it, in all honesty?
you're absolutely right. And I'm glad I'm just listening to you because you're saying all the right things. And this is where I am in my life, thanks to
Yes.
all the beautiful people, who've helped me to get here. Don't say but. Don't say but. Just do.
No, no,
You know that you
trust
need to
me.
do the right thing.
I
No but.
accomplished my goal the last time because 4 o'clock, I was out of bed. I would go do what I needed to do before going to work. It was mindset is everything. Now, I'd like you to talk about encouragement because I think encouragement is huge, like your videos. They
Yes.
are a source of encouragement and I think inspiration. And I think there are some people when they may be going through a rough patch, and sometimes it's just that one little word of encouragement that can turn a person around, like what your video did for me the other day. So I'd like you to talk about encouragement. How important is encouragement?
Absolutely. I mean, this is what it you know, it's all about. This is what the relay is about, right? This is what Ibrahim Traore is doing, right? This is what Marcus Garvey did. This is what Dandy, Juliet Nelson, right? My brothers, my queen, right? The solid rocks in my corner, including you, Bree, right? I've
Thank you.
always done for me, right? It keeps me going to the point where, yeah, this morning I was able to run my fastest 10K, right? And I wasn't at my best space, this whole weekend, right?
Yes.
But the encouragement, it lifts you, right? It reminds you that you are great, that you are capable, that you are worthy, right? I
Yes.
will always be encouraging to anyone who is in my presence, right? We all should, right? It's a great thing. It's everything that you just said just now about what you know you need to do.
Yes.
Just
Yeah.
imagine if you had that encouragement from someone, something each time when that alarm clock goes off to say, "Okay, come on, Bree, you got to get up.
Yeah.
Don't go back
That
to sleep."
that that I think that would make such a difference, which leads to my next question. The people in your circle. I think, and it's something I've been learning as I go along. You know, I don't believe that everyone should be in your life. That's just my personal belief. And there are some people I may not associate with. It's not like we're not friends anymore, but I prefer to surround myself with people who I know wish me well and they don't have negative energy. Now, you and Penny, like I have a brother, a biological brother, but you and Penny are the only two other guys in this world that I call my brothers, because
Appreciate
that's how I see both of you as your little brother, Penny's little bro, you know?
Yes.
And it's like I see you guys as my brothers. You know, there are not too many people that I would pick up the phone and call if I felt I needed to talk to someone. I mean, but I think that's helped me in so many ways because I do think there are some people who are negative energy, they don't mean you well. And I think when you surround yourself with people like that, they could be a part of your demise. I would rather have people in my circle who are there to cheer me on and I can cheer them on in return. I mean, what's your point? What's
No,
your opinion on that?
I thank you for that question, Bri, and thank you for having me in that esteemed space of one of the few people that you call your brothers and turn to. And I will get into that. I do agree. My brother always say though sometimes you do need some of those negative energies, negative people around just to remind you.
Yes.
I
Yes.
don't know that I necessarily want that, but I see this for me. This is the one thing that you get to decide. And it's one thing that, like you mentioned, has a profound implications, right? As we said in the beginning, society acts as a mirror, right? The people in your circle are your own little society. If they are eagles, you will soar with them.
Yes.
If they are chickens, you will walk around and never take flight, right? If they are lions and lionesses, you will be fearless and go out and conquer your fears. If they are like kittens, you'll be docile and wait your master to comfort and feed you for your survival.
Yes.
Right? So I agree. You need to choose the people in your circle wisely, right? Make substitutions if you need to as well. Not everyone is going to finish the game,
It's, I
right?
mean, I mean, it's true because, honestly, there are some people, if you're feeling down and you may call them, it's not that you want sympathy, sometimes you may just want that listening ear.
Yes,
Sometimes you just want a little understanding. Sometimes you may need a little compassion. And
right.
there are some people who are just not capable of that. And there are some people when you're down and out, they just want to step on your neck. I mean, it's just the truth.
But
So I think we have to be wise.
you certainly have to be wise, and we all know not everything that glitters is gold, and not everybody are who they present themselves to be.
It's true.
Right? Listen, I mean, I don't keep my journey a secret, right? And I know that there are a lot of people who jump to my help, right, when I hit the darkest corner of my life. But I know that there are people who celebrated that as well. I
Which
know
is sad.
I know that, but I'm happy that I know that because I'm know now that, okay, that's who you are and that's who you will be to me. And I
Yes.
appreciate that. And there are people who turned out to be so fabulous. I know they were always there. I didn't know how much they wanted to be there
Yes.
because they never had the occasion to show that. But in
Yes.
crisis, they've shown that. So yeah, you could make substitutions. So you could sub people in and out, right? Not
Yeah.
everyone's going to finish the game,
I
right?
mean that that's true. You said it perfectly. Let's talk about mental health. I think that when a person is struggling with their mental health, that's a tough stage for them as far as self-love and self-acceptance. Some people are ashamed of their struggle with mental health, which I don't think it's anything to be ashamed of. I think things happen in life, traumatic experiences, whatever it is, and I think that it's something that we should not be ashamed of. I'm still seeing a therapist, which I thank God I've been able to do that because it's helped me to keep my head above water, because I do have those moments. So let's address mental health.
Thank you for this opportunity, Brie. I mean, this is a very sensitive and important subject for me, right? To speak, as a mental health patient myself. I mean, fortunately for me, I have a circle of great people. Speaking of circle, right, which includes the great Queen Juliet, right? We have to keep saying that. That is so,
Yes.
right. Close friends, and a great queen I have at home here who helps me to understand that it doesn't define me, right?
Yes.
While I'm still on my journey, I mean, I'm in a much better space than I've ever been, with the struggle, right? So I understand things much better, and I don't necessarily slip to the dangerous levels that were once a common thing for me.
Yes.
I get to know, I get how people struggle, right? People struggling with mental health conditions, it negatively impact their self-love
Yes.
and their acceptance of themselves. It is exactly why, Brie, if you listen to my videos, especially on Wellness Wednesdays, right, I always end by encouraging us to love someone else, especially
Yes.
someone who might be incapable of loving themselves right now.
Yep.
It is very difficult. And it is extremely important to feel love. I mean, even if you can't love yourself, the absence of love is the point where some of us may feel like there's no
Yes.
point in going on. Mental health is critical.
I
We need a whole series of shows on just this topic.
Honestly, and whenever you have a topic in mind dealing with mental health, you're more than welcome to come back to this platform because honestly, I think that a lot of people are struggling because they're not dealing with their mental health issues. And I think it's a game changer. I mean, you shared about the rough things that you went through, but you went for mental health care and it turned your life around. And I think that there are people who think it makes them weak if they seek mental health care, but I think it makes you strong because if you don't face up to your struggle, how can you deal with it? I mean, seeing a therapist, like I said, and you've shared about seeing a therapist too, it's a game changer.
Oh, it certainly is. I mean, again, this is deeply because it's a part of our society, a part of our upbringing, a part of that trauma that teaches us, you're weak if you seek.
Yeah,
No, you're not.
yeah.
You're not. You're
It takes
strong
strength.
when you
It
seek
takes
help.
strength.
You know. But like I said, we need a whole series on this because we could go on and on and on. But I just do want to say that I acknowledge that yes, mental health plays a real role in self love because you don't even know how to love yourself when you're into a certain space.
It's
So
true. It's true. It's
yeah,
so true.
it's up to us to see that and love that. There's a guy. Let me just to share with you. Street guy. Like a lot of the street guys in Port Antonio. I remember when
Yeah.
I used to have the restaurant there. Some of my staff used to come up to me and say, "Mr. Core, you know them long time." I'm like, I don't, but I just gravitate toward them and them toward me. I
Yes.
know them by name. And there's this one guy. His name is Bevan Palmer. He was deported from here, from Georgia. I just get to know them and learn
Yeah.
about, listen to their story. And I remember my friend Marcus was saying to me the one time, "You haven't seen Bevan for a while." And I kept searching and searching and searching for Bevan, like everywhere. I would reach out to the police.
Yeah.
Already was in prison. Marcus told me the other day that he saw him on the street. I felt so overjoyed
Yes.
to know that he's alive and he's well. Because these people, they just need love.
A
And
little
if they
love.
can't give it to themselves, it's up to us to give it to them. They are our
And
brothers and sisters.
it makes a difference. And I have to say to you once again about your Wellness Wednesday videos. I think it's love coming through the screen. Sometimes those videos may come in when a person is going through a rough patch, and it's just a reminder, hey, my friend cares enough about me to send this video to see how I'm doing. I think it's a great thing that you're doing, Richie, and please continue to do it because I think it's that, love, we all need love, whether we want to admit it or not. But yeah, the love comes through in your videos for sure. I
I
have to say
appreciate it.
that
I
to
will keep
you.
doing them. Thank you,
Yeah,
Bria.
definitely, definitely. Now, let's talk about reassessing our values. When I was younger, I was caught up on fashion, makeup, superficial things, and as I'm getting older, and really learning about self love and, self acceptance, because it's like accepting the aging process, accepting things that I cannot change, and knowing that I'm worthy of love. And if no one else was to say that they love me, to know that I can love myself. I have my spiritual beliefs. I believe in God. I feel that knowing that I'm loved by God has really helped me a lot. So it's like the things I used to do and the situations I used to put myself in, I would no longer do that because I think too highly of myself to do that. So my values have definitely changed. I would like you to talk about, reassessing, our values.
Thank you again for this opportunity, Bree, to talk about this. But we live in an ever-changing world.
Yes.
The people around you are changing. The environment you live in, right? The work where you play are changing. The quality of the food, the quality of the care are changing.
Yes.
So reassessing your values is essential to make sure that you are still loving yourself and accepting
Yes.
yourself and not just swaying in the wind of change, right? You might need to change some of your own behaviors, right?
Yes.
And other things to remain functional. Do it, as you choose. I would agree, yes. All right. But we need to make sure that we're maintaining the core of who we are and remaining in love with who we are. But I agree, right? I remember one of my great friends. I just went to Virginia Beach to play with some guys I used to play with in New York from the early 90s, right? And I remember one of the guys, his name is Paul Vaughn. We call him Biggs. I remember he said to me when I turned 40, they call me Portland. Said to me, Portland, if you reach 40 and still behave like you're 20, you've wasted 20 years of your life. And that ring so profound with me, that stayed with
Yes.
me. So it's to the point that you're saying, like, when we are young, right, we behave ourselves differently because different things mattered to us, right?
Yes.
As we grow older, not that we've changed at the core of who we are, but certain things you wouldn't do anymore because your values change a little bit, right? Your responsibilities change a little bit, your roles change a little bit, right?
Yes.
When we were in Jamaica last March for the Elder Fair, right, I met my friend Carlos, right, and he was reminding me how we used to drive, and I'm like, yeah, but we were young, and dumb. We shouldn't be driving like that still,
Yeah.
So, yeah, reassess, and change as necessary, but keep your core.
Definitely. Definitely. I like how you said that. The warning signs, what are the warning signs that we need to step it up on self-care? I think you showed us a sign of that the other day, just knowing that, you know what, I'm not well enough to do Wellness Wednesday. I need to see about myself and look out for myself. So it's like you must have seen or sensed, you know what, I'm not in a good place. How
And
important is it to pay attention to the warning signs?
it's extremely important, Brie. And first of all, it comes with honesty. And
Yeah.
I sit here and even as me and Dondi were reasoning yesterday, and he kept saying to me, "Yes, core, but It didn't take you a day to get here. You
Yes.
weren't always here, right? And I give a lot of credit to, my queen sister Juliet again on this, because she always cautioned patience, right? That there's not a linear approach to anything here, right? That there will be falls, there will be stops, starts. You will fall down, you have to get back up. It's about being honest with yourself first.
Yes.
You have to be honest with yourself, because these things, they usually are obvious, right? You know when you're not well. You're the first one to know
It's
when you're
true.
not well, right?
It's
They
true.
are, and things vary, right? Things that make you not well, they might vary, but we must be honest with ourselves and not ignore them, right? We are
I
the first
definitely
ones to
agree.
own the ones who know that we're not well. So we
Yes.
must be honest and step up our self care if we can, or if we can't step up our self care, then find help, find a professional, right? Whether that,
Yes.
a mental health profession, whether that's a physician, whether that's a friend, right? But the first thing is to be honest with yourself.
I totally agree with that. Now let's talk about, it begins with me. I think we have a responsibility to ourselves. We have that responsibility to seek care if we need it, to address, our nutrition, to address our lack of physical activity or whatever it is that we have going on. I'd like you to talk about that.
I certainly believe it does. And one of the most important things that I have learned since I've been on this mental wellness journey, Brie, and thanks again to some of the literature that Juliet and Sharon have me reading, is that it's all up to me, really.
Yes.
I've even started a YouTube channel, in the same name, right? And I remind folks on my videos after each of my run, after sharing a meal preparation that I might share, that it is all up to me. Anything that
Yes.
a doctor or anyone else who is helping you in their profession points out to you, it is up to you to take the corrective measures. It is up to you in the first place to not engage in behavior that will lead to disease and ill health and death, right? The foods we eat and drink, the lifestyle behavior that we're just talking about, right? The lack of exercise. We know that these things will lead to, just erode your wellness,
It's
right? So
true. No, it's true.
not,
And I thought about as I wrote that question that that's what your channel, and I'm like, but I get it.
yeah.
I get it, and I definitely make the connection. Now there were some other questions. Now I have a couple more questions I'll ask you tonight, but
Mhm.
I'd like to save some of them for when you come back. If you're willing to come back, I would definitely love for you to come back because I appreciate your honesty. You're so authentic in what you share. And I do think it's important for us to address our mental health issues, and especially for men, because I think so many men are holding on to a lot inside. So, I'd like to talk about how vital is it to get enough sleep, and how does a lack of rest affect our thinking?
Um, you know, I say it like this, right? Just like the sun go down, right? And we get quiet, we get still, we get calm, we get darkness, we get cooler temperatures, right? So that the environment can replenish and shine bright and be buzzing again. The body needs that,
Yes.
right? The body needs that rest and recharge and recovery. It's extremely necessary, right? For us to be re-energized to go again and again and again. It don't happen without proper rest, right? If you felt rested enough when your alarm went off at 5 in the morning, you probably would jump up and go, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, just our own spiritual makeup, right, with our pineal gland, right? If that doesn't get time to shut down and connect with our greater spirit world, right, it's almost like we're zombies,
Yeah.
right? That is why they juice up our soldiers with things to keep them going, because it's not natural. It's not natural.
Yes.
We do need downtime to rest and recharge.
Yeah, we definitely need rest. Like I've seen things where I've seen like some celebrities like they don't sleep, and they're gonna grind, they're gonna do this, they're gonna do that because they're gonna make that money. And I'm thinking, how long can a human being keep up that sort of behavior? Because that's not healthy. I think your body is going to shut down after a while.
It happened to me when I was in Jamaica operating the restaurant, right? And I was volunteering at Fair Prospect High School. The restaurant is in Port Antonio, center of Port Antonio.
Yes.
I had animals in Pasla Gardens, that was west of Port Antonio. right? I had a farm out in Clear Spring, that's east of Port Antonio. So I have to make those 3 journeys in the morning, first thing. Then I had to go to school to train with the kids. I had to come back, close up the restaurant. By the time they were done closing and everything, I'm getting home at like 12, 1 in the morning to be
Wow.
doing it at 4 or 5 again the following morning. An elderly man looked at me the one time and he said to me, "My little brother, don't kill yourself trying to help yourself, you know." And I thought, I got it. I heard him, but I didn't hear him. I thought I got
Yes.
it. I didn't got it. I
That's
didn't.
it's
Like,
and would you say that played a role in what happened to you eventually? Because I
100,
do believe that's what's going to bring you down.
100%, 100%. Because when I hit that wall, yeah, it
It's
did.
rough.
So we do
It's
rest.
rough. It's rough. I'd like to welcome my cousin Lennon Lashley. Thanks for tuning in. You know, I would love for you to come back, because I would like us to delve deeper into this conversation. Do you have any closing thoughts for tonight?
Brie, I do truly appreciate all the things you've been to me. I mean,
Thank
we've
you.
we've we've known each other for quite some time now.
Yes.
And the appreciation that I have to be able to express, on your platform like this, sometimes it's really gratifying. And it's even more so gratifying to know that my work is having a positive impact on you.
Yes.
I would definitely like to come back.
Wonderful.
My queen sister Juliet said to me the one time that I should delve a little bit more into Rastafari. And reason being that when people hear Rastafari or think of Rastafarian, you know, someone like me is not what they picture, you know.
Right.
And she encouraged me that it
That's
might
our
be.
next topic then. Let that be our next topic.
I would love to, because you know, like yourself, Queen Sister Juliet is, such a superhuman being, so smart, so collected, so thoughtful. And I see that gap that I could help to bridge that she's talking about. You
Yeah,
know,
I mean, I would love for you. So let that be our next topic, so you can explain that to others, and because I would like to learn some more about it myself. So, I would like to take the time to thank you once again. I'd like to thank all the viewers for tuning in, and I'd like to wish everyone a blessed week. Thank you so much for just being so honest in all that you share. And, I am definitely looking forward to our next conversation. And what I would like to say to the viewers is this this platform is for, it's not just my point of view or my religion or what I believe. I like to listen to another point of view. I think when we have a meeting of the minds, I think that's where we can develop a better understanding of each other. So I'm
indeed.
definitely looking forward to that conversation, Richie. So I'll I'll start thinking of some questions, and we'll definitely prepare for that.
Thank you, Brie, and
Oh,
thank you,
you're welcome. You're welcome.
audience, for your time, and stay blessed. Keep loving
And
yourself.
for
And
the viewers, if you have any questions for Richie for the upcoming podcast, please send them to me, and I'll pass them on to him so he can prepare.
thank you.
Take care, everyone. Have a blessed week.